Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name is Christine Dupont. I'm a historian and curator at the House of European History. Welcome to our panel debate, Women Rights and Women Bodies Between Freedom and Protest. You know that the House of European History is a history museum, and when you walk through the galleries, our museum galleries, you will see that, and especially our permanent exhibition, you will see that European history is full of fights and progress towards more equality, more visibility, more agency, I would even say, of women in societies. You will experience, and it's visible in our museum, the path towards more equality in the fields of political and civic rights first, then towards more work equality, towards more reproductive rights as well. But nevertheless, the current situation of women in Europe nowadays demonstrates that rights are never granted forever, or that rights exist on paper and that are not or not always implemented. And I would say that more and more voices actually rise, claiming that we are even going backwards in many fields. I will take only two examples very quickly. The resolution issued on the 24th of June 2021 by the European Parliament on the situation of sexual and reproductive health and rights in the European Union was opposed by very violent attacks. And as a visual of our event today, you see this black umbrella. This was used as a protest sign, as a protest instrument in Poland in April 2020 to demonstrate against the quasi-ban of any form of abortion by the Polish government. And it was during the pandemic, and the fact that the umbrella is used is also a way to use public objects in the public space at a moment where demonstrations were forbidden for pandemic reasons. You will find more about these objects in our online collection because it is part of our collection, and I think you have the link to this online collection in the chat. This object, I believe, and you see a nice connection with the poster behind one of our speakers, is a strong symbol of the necessity to be awake and to resist. But it is also probably a reason to hope because it shows demonstration, it shows mobilization. So today we will discuss those questions of women's rights, more in particular around women's bodies, with an excellent panel of 5 speakers. What we wanted to do is to mix a little bit experiences, skills, and backgrounds of our speakers. So we will have academics, both historians and sociologists. We will have activists. We will have an artist. Some academics are also activists. Artists are activists as well. We are, in a way, are we all activists? It's a question that we could ask. Today we are also facing a terrible war in Ukraine, and that is my pleasure because for us it was very difficult to continue business as usual. Still, we decided to keep this panel debate today, and in order to introduce Ukraine in our panel, we have invited Alexandra Hrycak. You are professor in sociology in the Reed College in Portland, Oregon, in the United States. You are a specialist of feminism and women activism in post-communist Ukraine. And I would like to thank you warmly for having accepted and really as in the last moment to take part in our debate, because today with the current situation, and I think we come back to that, it's important to hear Ukrainian voices on those important topics as well. Around the table, we also have Elzbieta Korolczuk. You are a sociologist, commentator, women's and human rights activist. Your research interests involve social movements, politics and reproduction, as well as right-wing populism and mobilizations against gender. Welcome. We also have Klementyna Suchanow. You are a writer, editor. You recently published an investigation book about the network of the radical anti-abortion and anti-human rights actors across the world. You are also an activist, and since the political changes in Poland in 2025, you are involved in the women's strike movement, and that is the symbol we see behind you and which is also on our black umbrella, and one of the initiators of the International Women's Strike. Around the table, we also have Lili Sohn from France. You are a comic book author. Following a breast cancer, you published your first comic book, La Guerre des Tétons, in 3 volumes. You both write and draw, so you are a complete artist and creator. Your last books are Vagin Tonic, but also Mamas. You also collaborate with medical and feminist associations on numerous popularization and awareness projects. Welcome. And last but not least, it is my pleasure to welcome Luciana Jinga. You are a historian and researcher at the Institute for Investigation of Communist Crimes and the Memory of the Romanian Exile in Bucharest. Your wide range interest focuses, among other, on gender-related issues like women political activism, pro-natalist policies, but also on the history of childhood during the second half of the 20th century. So, thank you for all of you to be present. The debate will be held around a series of questions that I will address to the panelists. We will mainly speak French, but some questions will be answered in French as well, but translated or summarized in English by myself and also probably in the chat. But we would also like you, the audience, to take part to the debate and ask all the questions you might have to the panelists in our chat. And we will have half an hour at more or less 20 minutes, half an hour at the end of the debate to answer your questions. So feel free to use the chat for that. First of all, I would like to ask a very general question to all of you. And this is the following. So European 20th and 21st centuries history has shown progress in the right of women to decide on their bodies, on their sexuality. Nevertheless, as I said already in my introduction, serious obstacles still hinder those rights. Are we going backwards? That's a question that we may ask today. Which are the challenges today and which are the possible solutions and the reasons to hope? Alexandra, if you want to answer first.
Thank you so much, all of you, for organizing this panel. Today is a very difficult time for Ukraine, and I would like to say a little bit today briefly about the struggles of feminists and especially queer feminists in Ukraine today. And I also want to give the audience a little bit of an idea that the geopolitical situation in Ukraine today is a continuation of several decades of intense pressure on Ukraine that has placed feminist and gender minorities in grave danger, and that when this horrific invasion took place, we already had a good idea that it was going to be happening because things have been heading in this direction for some time. This is a moment for Ukrainians to explain to the world needs to know what the geopolitical situation has been for gender minorities and feminists in Ukraine for 2 decades now. And I'd like to start off by saying, even though, as we know, Ukraine is an independent country, For most of its existence, it has struggled in order to defend its sovereignty. And within this situation, Ukraine has signed international treaties, and one of them is CEDAW. Women nevertheless remain unaware of their legal rights, even though there is a very strong feminist movement in Ukraine and they've made progress. Why is this? Why is this? Because the state in Ukraine continues to be under intense pressure from Kremlin sources and has been for a very long time. Today, many of you probably are surprised that Ukraine was invaded, but Ukraine has actually been under invasion for a very long time, and Russian soft power has been an intense source of oppression, especially for feminists and gender minorities in Ukraine, since roughly the Orange Revolution, when Ukrainians stood up to a Kremlin-backed candidate who had stolen the election for president, and they said that they wanted to join Europe, and they did not want to remain a puppet state of Russia. I'd like to just say that Ukrainian feminists have been trying very hard to get the international women's rights community to understand that the paradigm of single issue in Ukraine does not work, because you have to place Ukrainian women's rights within a broader understanding of their challenges as they face imminent loss of their statehood. Many of you are probably wondering, after at some point the hostilities today that are ongoing today are over, what will be next? And I want to say there are two directions, and only two directions. One of them would be for an independent Ukraine to continue, and for people in Ukraine, gender minorities, feminists, to continue to fight for their rights as they have been. And the other is for a continuation of a gradual autocracy to deepen within Ukraine. We already know how that would look, because under President Yanukovych in the past, we already saw what the Kremlin's plans were for Ukraine. As soon as President Yanukovych, who was the Kremlin-backed candidate, became president, he dissolved all of the women's policy machinery in Ukraine. And so Ukraine stopped having any kind of state institutions for implementing women's rights or gender minority rights. And this continued for more than a year. There were no state institutions. All of the gender policy experts and all of their expertise vanished. And during this time, there was an intensification of pressure from the Orthodox Church for women to become patriarchally dominated and to view their primary role or mission in life as giving birth to children and staying with their husbands. And this is an incredible reversal of the situation in Ukraine. And I have 2 minutes still, or 1 minute?
Let's say 1 minute.
1 minute. I want to end by suggesting, if Ukraine is able to retain its sovereignty, I want to give you an idea of some of the brave people who are right now living under bombardment in Kharkiv, which is the second largest city in Ukraine, and a great center for feminism and especially queer feminism. And I'm going to speak about my friend who is a leader in the queer feminist community. And this is her address to all of you on Women's Day. She said, today, from the time, as I continue, from the time that I chose feminism as my system of understanding the world and my lifestyle, the 8th of March has always been for me an endless source of pain and despair. I know there will be, in the public and media scape, many people greeting women today and offering them beauty and roses and candy and champagne. But I also want them to know the reality is that people like me have been fighting for a different understanding of Women's Day. And today I have hope for that new approach. And she offered a video of young boys who, during the breaks between bomb strikes, had made a video wishing women strength and equal rights in Ukraine and statehood. And she said, today, the children of my friends are wishing a different future for Ukraine and for Ukrainians. And we are very brave and we will continue to fight because we're fighting for our country. A lot of people ask how I'm doing. It's a war. Just like my grandmother used to say about World War II, I wake up not in the morning, but several times each night to explosions all around me. There is no silence for us. In the evening, in the daytime, we go out and we try to find food. And then in the evening, we worry about how people might end up in the nighttime. We go into a room with no windows and we turn on the movies and we try to survive. We can't leave because this is our homeland and this is where we want to build our future. I also can't leave because I have my mother, and like many of us, we think about our families right now. We are unable to leave because my brother is disabled, like many Ukrainians, and he can't be evacuated. Nevertheless, we have hope. In the morning, after these terrifying nights, these nightmares, I wake up with my partner, and if I were a lesbian in Europe, she would be my wife. And we have breakfast together, and we draw strength because we have heard such wonderful wishes, especially from the LGBTQ community worldwide. Talking to you all, even though this is just a small round of support every day, I find your kind words lift me up every day. Yesterday, the internet went down and I just thought, this is the end. But then the internet came back on. And we still have something to eat because our neighbors who have evacuated have left us food. But perhaps tomorrow we won't have the food, but we will still be here. And we want all of you to know that we are struggling for our existence. And we want a future in Europe where someday I can be speaking of my partner as my wife. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. That is very strong, and I hope everybody has heard this this very moving and touching message. So thank you for sharing it, and we will publish it if it is possible because it's really strong and beautiful. Thank you, and all our wishes to her. Yeah, difficult to continue afterwards, but I think it's also there is hope, and I think it's important to be said. So, coming back to my question, Elzbieta, would you like to say something?
Thank you very much, and for organizing this discussion, and thank you very much to Alexandra. And I think that it's for me, it's a very touching story of courage, of determination, of hope for the future against all odds. And I do think that what we are witnessing today in Europe is not a continuation of the ways in which the world has evolved during the last couple of, well, centuries, but I do see it as a swan song of patriarchy. Patriarchy understood as a vision of the world that is rooted in the idea of hierarchy. There are people who have more rights because they have been born white or male, or because they have power. I do believe that it's a swan song of this patriarchal desire to have control over the freedom of others, over the needs of others, over the right to self-determination. Because not to go deeper into the sort of historical parallels, but I think that there is this very strong sense that what is happening today is an explosion of this desire to control others, to actually create the world that is exclusionary, that is very much rooted in a sense of greed and hunger for power. And in that sense, I think that many, and I would second Alexandra here, that many analysts or historians or political science specialists have been dismissing the politics of Kremlin, and not only of Kremlin, because obviously there are many right-wing European and non-European parties which have been cooperating along this axis of anti-gender or anti-gender ideology. And these people were very much dismissing the affective and discursive power of anti-genderism. And when I say anti-genderism, I'm talking about opposition to women's rights, reproductive rights, of course, but also to sexual democracy, the rights of sexual minorities, the rights of people of different ethnicity or race. So the idea is that for a long time, we could see this tendency to present gender equality or the rights of LGBTQ people as something that is alien to countries such as Russia or Poland or Ukraine or wherever else, and especially within this part of the world, this anti-gender or anti-equality agenda has been used to propagate the idea that equality or the rights of minorities is something that has been used as a form of a cultural colonization, right? That it's something that is alien to the people on the ground. Therefore, this is something which has been invented by the West or Brussels or Western feminists to colonize the people, to actually deprive them of their sovereignty, of their authenticity, of their allegedly patriarchal values that they want to pursue. And what makes me hopeful is the fact that, first of all, this view has been finally exposed, or this strategy has been finally exposed, and we can see these efforts for what they are, which are actually efforts to fearmonger, to build polarization, to present, for example, European Union as a source of moral contagion and moral corruption. So in that sense, it's a very, I would say, well, complex and to some extent effective way to create this chasm between the West and the East, in a sense, right? In which vision the East is allegedly the repository of moral rejuvenation, and of course, this moral rejuvenation means patriarchal values or patriarchal system. And I think that we have to see, look at this really as a political strategy, which it is. And in that sense, what makes me hopeful is, first of all, the fact that we are able to name and shame these strategies and to really expose these strategies for what they are. But also, if we look especially at young people and young women in particular, you can see you can see their resilience, their courage, their incredible ability, their strength to point out to these strategies and to oppose them, to really challenge that and say, we want freedom, we want our sovereignty, we want a sense of independence. And in that sense, I think that this is exactly what the Ukrainian nation is showing. A great resilience, a great ability to fight for their sovereignty and for their right for self-determination. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Elzbieta. Klementyna?
Hello, my name is Klementyna Suchanow. It's spelled in a different way. I feel that that part was to be rather more personal, so I maybe start with this story. I was born in a communist country, like at least 3 of us here present. And I was used to certain standards which were more co-educational that I know today somehow. But on the other hand, it was a time when, being a girl living in the 20th century, I was thinking of this new era that's coming with the 21st century, when everything is going to be perfect. That was my imagination at the time. Then once we reach the 21st, this is going to be like heavens. The history will be over, so my kids will live in a best time, historical time. The 20th century was not good. Was not good for Poland. Was not good for this part of the world. And so when the year 89 came, I was 15, and I felt like the new world is opening, all opening to me. And some years later, in 2015, we learned in Poland that something strange is happening, and Ukraine was already more experienced at that time, but we were very naive that Poland is like untouchable territory once it's been incorporated into the European Union, but we were wrong, and that's a good lesson. And what was going on in Poland since 2016, when the women's strike started in Poland, the protest and the umbrella became the symbol, was like awakening time for me and for many of us, for many women here, and our daughters and our friends and our neighbors. And there was a saying I know from the feminist books that feminism is all political. And I think that we came to the moment when we have to change it into a different saying. And this is what Alexandra said before, somehow, that feminism is becoming a geopolitical question. And living now and not understanding how feminism is tied to geopolitical issues is a great mistake. And I'm very hopeful that we learn this lesson, watching what's going on in Ukraine and seeing what's going on with human rights and with women's rights, how they are treated by some of the countries, especially the Federation of Russia, and especially the guys at the Kremlin, in fact, not the Russian people, is that there is a different model of governing countries, which is not democratic and which has taken away the rights that we were used to have in the 20th century after years of struggles of different sectors of people, because it's not only about women, it's also about workers and many other things and many other sectors of people. So if the question is whether we are going backwards, I would say yes, somehow, if we speak about legal issues, we are going backwards because we are losing certain rights. There are places where people, women, are losing those rights right now, and those places are parts of the European Union. If it didn't come to you so far in France or somewhere else in Belgium, don't be so happy, because you might have a chance to be touched by that evil forces. So in the legal aspect, I think, yes, we are going backwards. There were certain things achieved in the 20th century which are lost now. But in a kind of mental state of our minds, of what I'm seeing among young people in Poland, what I'm seeing in the Polish society right now, is a great progress being made. it's stepping forward very much. It's with big steps, like the society, Polish society today and some years ago, it's two different societies. Still, we have the government, which is very traditional, and it's a complicated issue for us to have those peoples over us. But the society has become so very different. So there are two paths that we are taking right now. The government is going to the right, the society is going to the left. So there is a hope, if we are looking for hope, in this, the change of the society, of our minds. So this process is going on. It's bringing great results. However, they are forced by the situation. So if we want to find something good in what's going on, is once we are forced, taken out from the comfort, once we reinstall all the rights, will be all very reinforced. Will be not the same people, because when I was born, we had those rights like given to us. We didn't fight for it. And now, once we are engaged in fight, we'll respect it even more, and we'll teach our other generations to always keep an eye on what's going on with human rights, because everything starts with human rights, and the war in Ukraine also started with those stories about gay rights or European satanic, I don't know, idea. So let me finish here with repeating the sentence about feminism being a geopolitical question right now, and later, once I have more time, I tell you something more about on this. Okay.
Thank you, Klementyna. Lili, let's turn to you. You mentioned Belgium and France, but and of course the situation is very different. But still, Lili, what do you think in French?
Eh ben pour moi, le droit à l'IVG, c'est un bon thermomètre mondial en fait des femmes à disposer de leur corps. Et d'ailleurs en France, il y a 2 ans, on a voulu rallonger en fait le délai d'IVG de 12 à 14 semaines. Et ça, il y a eu un premier rejet, ça a été un long débat et ça a mis 2 ans avant d'être accepté. Donc même si c'est légal en France, c'est encore tout un sujet politique d'ailleurs qui est quand même dominé par des hommes blancs et vieux. Donc voilà. Après, l'impression que j'ai, et surtout sur les réseaux sociaux où je passe beaucoup de temps, où je m'exprime beaucoup, c'est que la volonté de réinvestir des décisions liées à nos corps par rapport à la contraception, l'IVG, la maternité, l'accouchement, les menstruations, l'endométriose, la ménopause, la masturbation, la sexualité, les questions de genre, elles sont en train de dépasser le cadre militant. Et que tous ces sujets-là, ils entrent vraiment dans les sphères personnelles et familiales. Et je le vois tous les jours parce qu'il y a plein de livres qui sont publiés, plein de documentaires, il y a plein de comptes Instagram qui fleurissent sur ces questions-là. Et notamment parce que je produis des images, je vois surtout comment le corps des femmes et la représentation du corps des femmes évolue justement à travers ces réseaux sociaux. C'est qu'on voit de plus en plus de diversité de corps, qu'on sort de ces images très standardisées des magazines de mode, et c'est très intéressant. Et, et, euh, et donc ça me donne beaucoup, beaucoup d'espoir, notamment par rapport justement, on parlait de la jeunesse qui voilà, ont beaucoup plus de liberté par rapport à tout ça. Et, et même s'il y a encore beaucoup de barrières politiques, médicales, par rapport à tous ces sujets-là, je sens que le féminisme et les questions d'égalité de genre et de minorité, elles envahissent peu à peu bah, toutes les plateformes et les réseaux sociaux, et je trouve ça plutôt réjouissant. Et d'ailleurs, pour moi, c'est aussi quelque chose de peut-être très anecdotique, mais qui me donne aussi de l'espoir, c'est que dans la rue, par rapport au graffiti, je pense que chez vous aussi, hein, mais il y a des bits partout qui sont dessinés, et de plus en plus, je vois des vulves. Et pour moi, c'est un petit un petit combat qui est gagné. Je sais pas si tu peux, Christine.
Right. Yeah. So I will summarize. That's very that's a touch of hope in a way. So Lili says that as an artist, a drawer, and making books, she's of course very and also maybe of a younger generation. She's well, she started saying that of course interruption of pregnancy is still a debate in France as well, even though it is legal, and but it's still a debate, and it is a debate which is still held by older white men. So that's something that is worth to mention. But what is the touch of hope here is that when you go on social media, and she's very active on social media, and especially in younger generation, you see things changing, other approaches, and the women bodies are more and more visible. More and different women bodies, so not the stereotype women body that you see in fashion magazines, but something which is very much more diverse, that those social networks, and especially animated by young people, produce more and more images that represent this diversity of bodies, that that there is much more freedom about speaking about women bodies issues like menstruations, sexuality, etc. And there is a kind of liberation that is also visible in the streets, that we usually on the walls in our cities, we used to see dicks as representation everywhere, but now we see the dicks are still there, but we more and more see even now I'm lost because I'm so ashamed that I don't know the words in English, but sexual organs of women also represented as graffiti on the city's walls. And for Lili and for me as well, I have to say, I think it's a sign of hope. So I hope I summarized what you said. But thank you very much. And now we have Luciana for this first question still.
Thank you so much for putting together this panel. And I will go to Klementyna's intervention because I'm also born in a communist country, and today is also Mother's Day in Romania. And this morning, my daughter's teacher sent me this video with this show they put together in school today for their mothers. And I said, oh my God, I did exactly the same when I was in school, and I was thinking about the generation of women in my family, my grandmother, my mother, me, my daughter, and as a historian, of course, my question was, what changed in the last 30 and something years after the fall of the communist regime? As Klementyna said, we grew up with the idea that our rights are granted. I mean, the right to equal pay, right to education, everything was there. And even more after the fall of the communism, in fact, the very law that was passed by the democratic government was the right to abortion. So in the 90s, we had, I mean, in my head as a teenager growing, I had all the rights possible. But if we look closely, what slowly happened during those years, we can see that the abortion, even if it's still legal in Romania and theoretically is covered by the medical insurance, less and less medical practitioners accept to perform the procedures. Of course, in the public hospitals, because in the private clinics is a totally different situation. Also, and abortion still remains taboo, and sexual education is taboo and is still subject of intense debate. As we speak, we don't even still have a law concerning teaching sexual education in Romanian public schools. Also, Romania had this important economic crisis that followed the transition to a market economy. An economic crisis that had a stronger impact on the poor, rural, or marginal communities such as Roma community. And due to poverty, not of absence of schools or opportunity, the girls born in these communities had and have limited access to education. And also these girls give the majority of teenage mothers in Romania. Let's just say that Romania is on the second place in the European Union in terms of teenage mothers. Many other girls are victims of human trafficking and various other forms of sexual abuse. And if we add the growing influence of the church, not only the Orthodox Church, would be normal in Romania, and the conservative movements, the picture is not exactly what we want for the year 2022. But I also think there is hope, because is this incredible young generation, these girls that are finding alternative methods of association, of mobilization. And I can see them today in the main railway station in Bucharest, aiding helping the refugees, being there night and day, talking on this weird for us social media channels like TikTok and Instagram and so on and so forth. So the hope is there, but it's still up to us as generation of adults to educate, to support the gender studies programs at all level of education, have and promote women's rights on the public agenda. Talk more about that. And last but not least, in my opinion, fight together the structural inequalities and fight endemic poverty, because in the end, in the countries that don't have I don't know so visible gender issues, in the end these inequalities and poverty play a major role in future gender inequalities.
Thank you very much, Luciana. Thank you very much, all of you. In a second part of our discussion, I will ask you a specific question to each of you according to your specialities. And I would start with Lili, and we will show some examples of your work, because as you are a drawer and an author, it's nice to see your drawing. And I wanted to ask you, even if you partially already answered some of these questions, but in your work, and you will see it, we are not seeing it because we are in a different platform, so it's for the speakers it's complicated, but you see it as the audience. So as you can see, I guess if it is online now, the body of the women is very central. That is also why we have invited you, of course. We have breast, vagina, vulva, etc. very visible, and it's I wanted to ask you which are the reactions of your readers, if you know, of course, but also the reactions of the people, because you said that you are participating in workshop, in medical and sexual education, etc.? And are the reactions different according to generations? Because I think the generational issue is important here. So.
J'ai fait ce travail autour du corps il y a environ 5 ans. Et en France, il y a 5 ans, on parlait encore très peu, enfin, on n'avait pas trop d'images du clitoris, du vagin. Maintenant, ça s'est un petit peu plus démocratisé. Mais moi, je me suis rendu compte que je connaissais pas du tout mon corps suite à cette expérience du cancer du sein. Donc en fait, j'ai cherché des informations. J'ai rencontré des médecins safe, des sages-femmes, des associations et j'ai dessiné en fait pour comprendre comment tout ça s'imbriquait. Donc j'ai dessiné le vagin, l'utérus, le clitoris, les glandes de Bartholin, l'éponge urétrale, les glandes de Skene et j'ai visualisé comment tout ça interagissait, s'imbriquait et j'ai beaucoup partagé du coup, sur les réseaux sociaux, pendant des conférences, avec vraiment différents publics et un public très large. Donc ça peut être autant des adolescentes que des femmes âgées et en fait, je me suis rendu compte que très peu de femmes, connaissaient leur corps. Qu'il y avait encore, énormément de tabous et de gênes. D'ailleurs, c'est pour ça que dans mon travail, j'utilise beaucoup le dessin et l'humour, parce que ça permet de faire passer ça beaucoup plus facilement et après, ce qui est sûr et certain, c'est qu'une fois que la glace est brisée, on va dire, je sens que tout le monde est très intéressé de partager, l'intime en fait, puisque finalement, on peut se sentir très seul, dans ces questionnements-là, qui sont très tabous et qu'on se rend vite compte en fait que ça concerne tout le monde et il y a un vrai, bien-être à partager, ces questions de l'intime-là. Et en tout cas, comment dire? Le ressenti que j'ai, c'est qu'il y a vraiment, cette connaissance du corps individuel, elle fait vraiment partie, de cette, prise de pouvoir, en fait. Voilà.
Merci. So I will summarize briefly in English. So it's a very interesting experience because so it started as I said at the beginning from your own exploration of your own bodies and when you had breast cancer and that you explained that you started to draw to understand your own body and it's really a drawing for understanding, for visualizing what is happening and how it works, how all those organs, vagina, clitoris, etc., are working together. And you also started sharing it on social networks and afterwards also in workshops, in public conferences and discussing with other people from all generations and walks of life. So that's interesting. And what you realized actually is that women in particular know very badly their own bodies, and it was a kind of discovery, but a discovery which is important to share. And there was an interesting, you said that women and lots of women are feeling themselves lonely and isolated and that's those moments of sharing and speaking about things that were maybe earlier more taboo is very important to feel oneself better. So it's this knowledge about our own bodies that is helping also women in this case to feel better. So I hope I summarized.
Oui. J'aimerais juste donner un exemple,
sure.
par exemple,
Yes,
qui me
sure.
paraît très important. C'est que, par exemple, lors d'une pénétration, on pense tous en fait que c'est le vagin qui est courbé et que c'est les pénis et que le vagin s'adapte au pénis en fait, alors que c'est totalement le contraire. Qu'en fait, c'est le pénis qui s'adapte au vagin et je trouve que c'est un savoir qui est peut-être, tout bête comme ça, mais ça symbolise beaucoup de choses, en fait, que ça soit le pénis qui s'adapte au vagin et pas le contraire.
Yeah, it also says the example you says that actually during a penetration, it is the penis which adapts itself to the vagina and not the other way around. It shows how we have seen sexuality in a very through very male lenses, and it changed totally the perspective. And I think it's important to know. It's very simple and straightforward, but it's very important to know, and it changes the perspective. So I think it's a good example. So thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, and also your drawings, of course. So I think this is also full of hope and interesting thoughts. But I will move to another specialty, because we have a historian. I'm a historian myself, so for me it's very important. And Luciana, you already partially approached this question, but you have studies gender-related issues in the 20th century, in 20th century communist Europe, and notably in Romania, in particular pro-natalist policies under Ceausescu. What would you say? How this research help to understand today's gender-related issues in Central and Eastern Europe?
Thank you, Christine. Well, when I first started the project together with my 3 other colleagues back at the Institute for the Investigation of Communist Crimes, we pretty much followed the steps of Gail Klingman, who approached the subject in the 80s and in the 90s. So the big picture was there. The victims, what happened, the general story. But for us, working within an institution that deals with victims of the communist regime, it was important to put women between these victims, because all the other projects, all the other research projects concerned practically only men that were subjected to repression in the 50s and 60s. So instead of going towards oral history, as Gail Klingman did as anthropologist, we went to the archives, to the health ministry archives, because it was important to see the medical practice, the sufferance of those women that died, because the pro-natalist policies that started in Romania in 1966 after a liberalization period had as final result 10,000 women that died, 10,000 victims that are, I mean, countable in the archives. We have no idea about the real number of women that died because of this law. So we spent almost 4 years reading incredible medical documentation, reading the last 2 days in the life of women that had 2, 3, 4, 5, 9 children at home, and still they found that an illegal abortion was the only solution for them, not to have another mouth to feed at home. So it was in the same time I started my PhD thesis in France with Christine Barr, on a different topic, but closely related to that. That was the gender regime in communist Romania, and the two subjects came together somewhere in giving a voice to these women. And because we are here, our host is a museum. I would love, and this is my hope for the future, one of my future projects, to put women as victims in museums, because we don't have them enough. And Romania still does not have a museum of communism. This is another story, another debate. But I'm sure that if my colleagues, we don't do something on the field for this and fight for this, that museum will completely leave women aside and outside the collections and the story. As for what is the lesson of the Romanian case, the lesson is quite simple, is incredibly simple, and it's impossible to see that some people have troubles accepting the truth. Abortions will never go away. We'll always have illegal abortions. We'll always have these categories, the marginal, the poor, that will be the victims, because the others will always find some methods to benefit from medical and appropriate care. And the conclusion is just there. Let women keep their body untouched by patriarchy, by men, by the others. The bodies are ours to hold and to decide upon it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Klementyna, you have recently published a book, which now I will tell the title. I translate it from Polish, of course. This is War, Women, Fundamentalists, and the New Middle Ages. So the words in this title are very strong. And my question would be, which are the danger and what can we do? Because there is a threat there, according to you. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, after the speech by Luciana, I don't know if I pronounced it well, I have a reflection about the historian's work, and because we are part of the Museum of the European History here at this meeting, because I used to work as a researcher. I personally see myself as a researcher, not exactly a historian, but I used to work with history, with the history usually of the 20th century, usually linked to literature rather than to other aspects of those fields. And what happened to me, and this is my personal professional story, is that from being a researcher in the field of history, literature of Poland and Latin America, let's say, with the changes that we started noticing in Poland with this new conservative government that we have since 2015, I had to turn into an investigative journalist. I mean, I didn't like to work with the current issues, because I always felt like this is too short term. You know, everything's happening now. You know, journalists take it up, they write about it in 2 days, and it's done. Usually, I need more time to go deeper, to see the archives, to talk to the people, to look for photos, pictures, and all the documents. And it was always for me too much in rush. And I kind of despise this journalist approach to the issues. But I had to do it. I was forced to do it in 2000, after 2016 somehow, because I noticed that there is a very strange situation around us. There are strange actors at the scene that we didn't see before. New organizations and people, politicians saying strange things that we never heard before. And what was this all coming from? I couldn't explain it. So from a researcher of old times, I turned into a researcher of the current issues. And this is how I got involved. And finally, this is the result of that was the book called This is War. And when I gave this title, and why I gave such a title, which Christine said is strong, is because I was interviewing people that belong to the conservative organizations, and they are placed in different parts of the world. Some of them are based in the USA, some of them are based in Europe, some of them are based in Latin America, but there are some based in Russia. And everywhere I went, or every case I studied, I was seeing always this phrase, which said this is war in different languages. So this is war, esto es guerra, and always the same expression. We went to a World Congress of Families with Elzbieta, and from the stage I could hear again, this is war. It was so strange to me, but finally I understood that if we don't take it as they say, they define it as a war, then we are on the lost position, because we will never use adequate tools or tactics to fight them back, because we'll always be thinking in those civic terms that we are having a cultural war, that we have different ideas about the future or life. This is not true. For them, for those guys who are standing on the other side, who are forcing us into Middle Ages, for them, this is war. And what's going on today in Ukraine is another aspect of this war. And this is now when I'm going to start to tell you the story a little bit from my book. And it has to do a lot with Ukraine, because for me, all that story, as I researched it back till 2012-13, everything on this fundamentalist market that we see today being so active started at the same time as Putin was losing power, as he invaded Ukraine. You had in Ukraine those stories about gay Europa. It was a threat telling the Ukrainians, you don't go to the European Union because they're all gays, and it's, there are no family values. Those people are lost. And Putin, from being a former KGB guy, he turned into a leader of conservative so-called values. He had a speech at the Vajda Club, which is a place where he's letting the world to know what he's thinking about. This is like an annual meeting. And since then, the church is working very closely with his government. This is since where we hear the same phrases everywhere in Russia, in Ukraine, then in Poland, and then suddenly in Latin America. And this is how me as a woman, suddenly one day I was called feminazi. Why and how, what this is coming from? Feminazi, what is this? And I heard the same in Argentina, and I felt like, hey, come on, we are so far away from each other, Argentina and Poland, and I'm hearing the same expressions. So there was a kind of linguistic operation also launched at that time, and we started having reflections of it in different parts of the world, but we were not able to connect those dots. We all felt like Ukraine is somewhere there away, and Argentina is somewhere away, and USA, it's a different story. With Trump, we learned it's not a different story, it's exactly the same story. And the root of the story and the prime source of the story is the Kremlin. So finally, we are coming now with the war in Ukraine, and this is the best example. I mean, the conditions are dramatic, but I say the best example because finally, with your own eyes, you can see how those two things are very connected. They are connected not even on the level of ideology, of the tactics that are used, which is war, the cultural war here, the hybrid war for years, and then real war in Ukraine right now, but it's connected also by the persons. There is a person, one of the oligarchs around the Kremlin, whose name is Konstantin Malofeev. He's sponsoring the politicians like Marine Le Pen. He's transferring money to her. He's transferring money for weapons in Donbass, and this is why he was sanctioned. At the same time, he's sponsoring the conservative organizations. Even in Europe, in Poland, we have some of this money. it's circulating. So there's one person, I'm taking one example, which is present in all those fields. So those stories, when I used to present it to the public some time ago, and especially, at the beginning when the book was published and even before, it was always taken with some reserve, like, maybe you're somehow right, but maybe you're going too far. You're trying to unite everything with everything, no? So there was some kind of skepticism. I usually try to explain people that there are different types of wars going on right now. There is this culture war, what you call culture war. There is a hybrid war around Ukraine. Now, with the real war in Ukraine, this is like a total addition and exemplification of what I was trying to explain since years. So first I was being taken as a crazy one, but at the end it looks like it's not me being crazy, it's the Kremlin, it's Putin being crazy. And I don't know if I explained it well. There's lots of details that I could present, but I think this is not the audience and place to do it. But it's all described in the book. I would only finalize with paying your attention to how the channels of those fundamentalist, religious, pro-life, so-called organizations are actually exploited in the same way and infiltrated in the same way as the fascist or nationalistic organizations. So there are two channels that are used by the Kremlin for the same purpose. You might think they are different, they are not. Look at Vox in Spain. They are together with the organization called Hasta Oír and Citizen Go, which is sponsored by the Kremlin. Look at Salvini's Lega, it's the same case. Look at Le Front National in France, it's Marine Le Pen, it's the same story. And La Manif pour tous didn't come from nowhere. So let me finish here.
Yes.
I hope it was not too complicated, but still, if we want to look for a hope, I think that the knowledge about what's going on is our hope, because this is our liberation. Once we know what's going on, we can find the appropriate tools, to fight it back.
Thank you very much. I think it's a strong message, and I directly link it with you, Alexandra, because it's exactly what I wanted to ask you about this so-called civilization war. Are we living in two different Europes? What is at stake here? You answered partially already in your first question, but if you want to add anything, because I think it's of course very well connected to what Klementyna just said. We cannot hear you now. Enfin, I cannot hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I have 2 minutes.
Yes, if we want to keep some time for the question of the audience, that would be nice. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to echo what everyone else has been saying, and I also want to stress how important a focus on the body is for developing a more coherent understanding of the new tools of power that we're talking about here. And I'd like to also encourage all of us to realize that although we were earlier talking about the Soviet Union as somehow committed to gender equality, I would actually really urge that we realize that as the Romanian case suggests, that it was actually a case of a different kind of patriarchy than the one that we see in the West, which is private patriarchy, and that actually under communism there was something like public patriarchy, where the state itself was appropriating women's bodies for its own biopolitics. And I want to suggest that looking at the situation with especially abortion, we see that there is a focus on control over women's bodies by these new and dark forms of power. In terms of understanding the Kremlin's own framing and the way in which women's bodies are being controlled, I think that social media and other kinds of resources that we've been talking about have been definitely very deeply invested in by the Kremlin as sources of dark power or of soft power. And I want to return us to this idea that they are using the tool set of repression that they inherited from the Soviet Union. And I'm going to give an example of how, as we know in the public patriarchy, it wasn't just a matter of women were equal and they went to work and then they went home and they had to do a lot of housework. The Soviet state itself transformed every citizen into a potential enforcer of the state's biopolitics, and its specifically control over women's bodies developed through denunciation and dissimulation. And people were taught in school to enforce on very conservative understandings of women's sexuality and purity, and how everyone was supposed to be protecting every other woman's purity. And this is very dangerous, and we see it circulating again now through the anti-gender movement and its various manifestations. And this is devastating for everyone, really, but specifically what we see in the Ukrainian case during Yanukovych's period in office, and he's the person that the Kremlin has decided to reinstall as president of Ukraine. During that time, there were several very high-profile rapes and gang rapes that became the subject of a lot of media attention, and women's rights activists rallied to try to draw attention to the way in which the state was trying not to protect the women and their legal rights to body inviolability, to the basic human rights that we all know of. And through Kremlin resources, there was a huge, absolutely huge attempt to reframe these women themselves as deviant and as immoral, and therefore, and even worse, to make them equally responsible for their own rape, for being immoral and deviant women who did not treat their body in a pure way as a vessel for future children. And these were not voices that we would regularly hear on the internet in Ukraine or any other country. But since then, we have started to hear them everywhere, in Argentina, in Poland, this idea of parental responsibility, as if in this particular case, but the parents of the rape victim were viewed as just as responsible for her rape as she was. And this is, as we all know, it's a very dangerous form of repression. And it resonates with certain kinds of conservatism that have been deeply invested in right now. And so I think it's very important for us, as other speakers have suggested, to analyze these new tools that are being used worldwide now, because a lot of them were experimented with and were developed in Ukraine and then disseminated through a lot of different channels, including social media later on.
Yes, thank you very much. And to finish, Elzbieta, I wanted to ask you, of course, you can also elaborate on what has just been said, but as a specialist of social movements, I wanted to ask you how important is social mobilization, and especially, of course, women mobilization, to help shifting political agendas and moving towards more equality, and how important is the physical, but also maybe the digital presence of women in the public sphere, because that's what you have studied. And does this give us also a sense of hope for the future?
Yeah, so just to connect to what the previous speaker said, I think that there is no, or there should be no question about the fact that gender, this broadly defined gender, including women's rights, reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights, has become the focal point of today's political cleavages. In other words, gender or equality is not a sideline, is not a strategy to hide something else. This is the struggle, the center of the struggle today, and this has its consequences. One element is that when we think about this mobilization of ultra-conservative forces, of religious fundamentalists, the question is this a continuous power of the people who have, or organizations or networks who have their roots in, you know, anti-communist mobilizations in Latin America in the 60s, or the Vatican's opposition to gender mainstreaming in the 80s, or American culture wars from the 70s and 80s, right? Or the certain elements of patriarchalism, which was present also, as Alexandra said, in the communist or socialist countries. And of course, all these roots, all these elements are present there. But I think that we should see this new wave of opposition to gender equality as actually a reaction to the strength and mobilization of the feminist movement worldwide. So in a sense, they are the group or the movement which goes against the tide. And the tide is, as it's been said already, especially in case of young generation, especially in case of young women, towards more equality, towards much more gender, I would say, open definitions of identity, of what sexuality is, of what sexual freedom is, of what we are as gendered beings. And in that sense, I very much agree with my colleague, a feminist philosopher, Ewa Majewska, who sees feminist movement as a counterforce, probably the main counterforce against fascism, basically. Right? Because right now what we are seeing is not just right-wing populism or extremism, it is fascism, in the sense that it is a power which accepts violence on its road to political domination. In that sense, I see this, the values which has been always at the core of the feminist movement, such as ethics of care, solidarity, pluralism, and inclusion, a key values in our future struggle for basically a better world, right? A world without war, without violence, without these extreme forms of domination. And what makes me hopeful is that gradually, but surely, institutions and people, individual people who in our different societies used to have a certain level of immunity, like sexual predators, right? Like the representative of the Catholic Church who has been covering, you know, institutional pedophilia or institutional ways to cover pedophilia, right? That they are brought to justice. They have been brought to justice and they have been exposed, and mostly by women, right? On our road to a more just world. And I do hope that this will also happen to people like Putin, who are putting the world on fire, right? So in that sense, I do hope that this idea that the world can just go on as it used before, you know, that those who perpetrate violence and who bring about deep polarization and basically who make, you know, others suffer, that they are not immune anymore, that they are not beyond, you know, justice and a certain form of retribution. So I do hope that this one element, this is just one element which shows that we are able to proceed towards the future with a certain amount of courage, determination, and resolve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. I think I will wrap up quickly because my colleagues tell me that there are not so many questions in the chat. I'm just mentioning that Emily is asking for speaking about equity and not equality. Okay, and some comment also about abortion in Ireland, because we were speaking about Eastern Europe and Western Europe, but not the very West. And of course, we know that the situation in Ireland with the recent legalization of abortion. So our speaker here, Matrina, said, while I'm happy about the legalization of abortion in Ireland, I'm still shocked at the level of obstetric violence during birth that women still experience. It feels like we take one step forward, two steps backwards. So that's also an issue maybe that we can address today. It was more a comment than a question. On my side, I would say that our debate has shown how important it is to work transnationally. So I think that's a very good example that we have to speak to each other. And of course, that's what you all do. But it's also important for us as a museum to address those issues from all parts of Europe, with the differences, but also lots of things and that are going in the same direction. I would also keep this very important lesson. I would say that we need time, we need to research, we need to know, and knowledge is the power. So that's something that we can certainly keep as one of the reasons for hope. But also that there is hope. There is hope in especially in the youth, in young women, and I think this message of hope is even more important to address today, tonight, especially with the special closing words from our friends, our colleagues, our sisters, I would even say, in Ukraine. And if I would personally remind with a very touching note the message that you were addressing from your colleague in Kharkiv, Alexandra, that I think we can, I'm very happy that we could share this voice today, and it's a very it is also a very strong hope for the future, and we wish you and her and all our Ukrainian sisters all the courage they need to face this situation. So I have a new question. So I was about to conclude, but we still have 7 minutes. What do you think of Western media that cover the current war being dominated by white men? And would anyone have a comment on the racist attitudes of major commentators and how feminism and anti-racism could be brought together? So, anyone?
Yeah, if I may just comment,
Yes.
because I try to follow different media, Polish, I mean, English speaking and Swedish. So it's quite interesting to see the difference, because on the Polish media and in the debates, I see almost exclusively men, as if all of a sudden the war, has become, only a men's business, in the sense that only men are experts and only men should have an opinion. And women can be only, the refugees or the casualties of war, right? Or those who are helping those in need. Because if you look at the refugee relief, for example, in countries such as Poland, it is quite clear to me that the vast majority of the people who are doing the work on the ground are women. But I'm happy to see, for example, on CNN, that their reporters on the ground and people commenting are actually, it's probably 50% between men and women. And they have quite a few women on the ground, and they're, I would say, providing a very multi-layered, very complex perspective. And they're really helping to see what are actually the outcomes of the war for lay people, not just from the perspective of the military. And similar perspective, I would say, or similar change I can see in the Swedish media. So it can be done, obviously. It can be, it is possible to have a much broader perspective. But of course, it really requires a lot of effort. It really requires our effort to actually push for this kind of changes. And it is, I see this pattern over and over again. When there is a huge crisis happening, women are usually the ones who are doing the work on the ground, for example, helping those in need. So we sort of suspend our demands to be the voices who are, doing the work of explaining, interpreting what's happening, right? Those who are actually creating a discursive frame around that. And I think that we should not forget about it, because it's extremely important to hear the voices of women when we talk about this major crisis, such as the things that are happening today in Ukraine. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you very much. I think it's also a good conclusion is in a way. Here the complexity I would keep certainly, and hear the voices of women. I also took on board, Luciana, your suggestion to put women victims in museums, and I will personally, I'm the responsible curator for recent communist times in 70s, 80s. So I will come back to you for some concrete suggestions, because I think it's very important. So thank you very much, all of you. I thank you for the audience and the question we got in the chat. I would like to tell you all that this panel debate will be still available online on our YouTube channel from tomorrow onwards. So if you want to share it with other people who could not follow tonight, feel free to do it. So thank you, all of you. And I would like to give a special thanks also to my colleagues who are not visible tonight, but who organized everything. Theodora, William, Janos, and Emma. So thank you, all of you, for your great help. And thank you to all our speakers. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening.